What's up, everybody? Welcome to the When in Seoul Podcast. It is I, Danny Cho. I am here once again with my beautiful co-host, Bobby Choi.
안녕하세요.
This week, we're going to try not to speak Korean because people have told us that our Korean's terrible.
Yeah, clearly.
Yeah. But today, we have a special guest. Our guest, she is probably the only female stand-up comedian working in Korea today. And ladies and gentlemen, big round of applause for Chung-Yoon Choi. Woo!
안녕하세요. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here.
Oh.
Yeah,
thanks for being late.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I mean, Gangnam traffic. And tomorrow is the Independence Day holiday. So
that's
I didn't count that into consideration, how bad the traffic was going to be.
Are people headed out uptown?
Yeah,
is
pretty
that,
much
yeah.
because they want to have like a long weekend with the vacation. So
they'll take off on Thursday and Friday, no work?
Looks so.
Yeah.
That's a smart thing to do.
Yeah, it's really good. Unfortunately, I don't have, actually, Bobby and I don't have like real jobs.
Yeah,
so
we don't have a regular 9 to 5.
Well, me neither. I mean, I freelance. So.
Yeah. So, Chung-Yoon, you might be the only, the only female stand-up comedian here, but also, aside from me, the only one that can possibly talk about stand-up comedy in Korea in English.
I guess. And I've been greatly benefiting from the fact that I'm the only female at this point. But, I should really work on being funnier than just being the only Korean women who can do that.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
You should be funnier.
But I've actually seen your stand-up, and it's really funny.
Oh, thank you. I don't know. If it's really funny, I don't know if you say, like, hey, you're funny.
It's because it was in the same lineup as Danny, and you destroyed Danny's set. So.
Oh, wow. We're talking dreams today. Aren't we? We're talking fantasies over here. So, explain. I want to get to know the audience for you, to get to know like your journey. Like, what made you try stand up?
So I'm 32 US age, so that's not really like the right age to begin comedy, I guess. But it's been my lifelong dream to do stand-up comedy. But I discovered comedy when I was 19, 20. I went to college in United States.
Oh.
Yeah, and like you said before, Koreans don't really grow up with stand-up comedy.
So you discovered it in the States?
Later, yes.
Okay.
And Margaret Cho was actually the woman that I discovered stand-up comedy through. Yeah.
You saw her live?
Yeah.
No. I never saw stand-up comedy live when I was going to college in United States because I didn't know that was a thing. I thought it was just something on TV or DVDs or YouTube. And I always felt kind of marginalized as a Asian study abroad student, even though there were a lot of Koreans and Asians. And I always felt kind of, inconfident to speak up and hear myself say anything in front of large audience. And then there was this crazy Asian lady, like she was like this tiny lady who just killed every time.
Yeah.
She was really popular at the time, like 2003, 2004.
She really owns the stage.
Yes.
Yeah. You're talking about Margaret?
Margaret.
Yeah.
Margaret's not that tiny. She's kind of a. I mean, I'm not saying that she's.
I mean, compared
big,
to the mainstream stand-up comedians.
Oh yeah.
And just the fact that she's there by herself, no costume, no makeup. It's just like her and the mic and the subject she picked. She's like this gay icon who talks about her family, religion, politics, and sexuality in a really bold way. And I was like, wow, this is crazy. I've never seen any female, Korea or elsewhere, do that. And so I was really inspired by her. And then I discovered other stand-up comedians through her. And I was really depressed at the time for multiple reasons. But, I had all kinds of like social phobia. So I really didn't get out much. And I would just watch stand-up comedy on YouTube and then start writing my own jokes. But I never dreamt of, going out and make people laugh. Yeah. So, I started writing jokes at age like 19, 20. And I had notebooks full of jokes, but then I just, stashed away saying that I'll never be able to do it. I can't even stand in front of like 10 people.
I understand that sentiment because when I was growing up, there weren't really Asian, at least the Asian American musicians that I could look up to.
Yes.
So I never knew it was an option for me to be a musician, although it was a dream of mine. So I kept writing song after song, and I just had like notebooks full of songs and lyrics. And I was like, I never really thought I would do anything with it. And then I think it was like after doing the 9-to-5 work, I quit my job at 26 and I started really late.
Wow.
And so, I kind of understand that sentiment.
Yeah. At this point, I feel like there's no late in age type of thing, but
I
people
agree.
view you as, wow, you started out late. But I think, like you said, representation is really important.
Absolutely.
And for me, growing up in Korea, for women to be funny wasn't a virtue. When you're trying to be funny, people like shoot you down saying like, hey, girls are not supposed to like play pranks or do impressions. And also the funny ladies you see on TV are really like stereotypical, the chubby lady, the ladies who are not like socially accepted as beautiful, kind of throwing themselves down, and kind of making fun of themselves about their looks.
Kind of slapsticky as well, right?
So, and also you never felt that, wow, being funny could be a profession. So,
I see.
Yeah, so that was me in my 1920, early 20s.
So these jokes that you wrote in your when you're 19 and 20, were they in English or in Korean?
I wrote in English.
Really?
Yeah, and I kept really hard trying to find these notebooks because I felt like there might be something there, but I can't relocate it.
I think it's I think if you did find those things, you'd probably be disappointed because everyone has to start somewhere, like in grade school, all that was just like the staging ground for us to learn to read and write, right? And so I'm just trying to make you feel better.
No, it's absolute truth because, like when I started at 18, right? And I'm going to be 36 next month, right?
Wow.
And I remember the first jokes that I told on stage.
Oh, and you better tell us the first joke right now. You can't just say that and not tell us the joke.
All right, okay. Okay?
One of your first jokes or the first joke.
This is the first joke I ever said on stage, and I want the listeners to not get offended because it's a little bit risque.
So
in my
you've
opinion.
been an offensive comedian from the get-go.
I'm an offensive person, just in general, right?
We know.
Yeah. Oh, thank you guys. Love you guys. So the first joke I said, basically the setup was like, how gay guys fart differently.
How they fart differently.
Yeah, the sound, you know what I mean?
That's
I was like,
good premise.
So for example, like my farts would be like, right?
Okay.
But then a gay dude's fart would be like,
Well, I don't get it. I don't get it.
There is no you want me to really explain it? The sphincter muscles are a little bit loose, and hence it goes.
Okay.
Wonder why.
I'm just thinking it's your first joke, so
Yeah.
it'll probably be.
I don't
bad.
say that stuff anymore. I don't say it anymore. I know that it's bad. I know it was in poor taste, but I remember. So the idea is, like, have you ever read like love letters you wrote in junior high and stuff like that? Like, it makes you cringe. You know what I mean? And yes, I did write love letters in junior high in Spanish.
Oh, what?
Well, how would you read them? Doesn't the person you wrote it to, don't they own it? Like, have you asked for it back?
No, because there's.
Or were you writing it to someone and it never got to them, and you just reread it?
Do you remember the what do you call it? The social media platform of yesteryear called Zanga.
Zanga, I do remember Zanga.
Yes, Zanga is more like a.
Did not grow up with Zanga.
Yeah,
You're a
is.
Cyworld generation.
Cyworld. Zanga is more of an American thing, but it was more like a blogging.
It was right before MySpace.
I see.
That was a
MySpace,
big thing.
Yes.
Yeah.
And Friendster.
Friendster.
Yeah.
And so, you would write journals and you would write
Yeah, it was like a diary for everyone to read, right? Yeah.
And I remember, reading some of my entries.
Yeah.
And I went, woo! Woo! Punch me in the face.
Oh man, you know
Right.
what? I actually have to look up to see if I can find those. They're still like archived.
Do you know the Korean expression, by the way, that kind of feeling of punch me in the face? You know,
What?
이불 kick.
Oh, yes.
Ibu
Yeah,
kick?
yeah.
I've never heard of that. What is
it's,
that?
kicking your blankets. So when you lie to go to sleep at night, and then like suddenly the memory haunts you about the embarrassing things, and then you're kicking your blankets.
Oh my
around.
gosh,
So
that's a
이불 kick.
I love that phrase because I do that all the time. Like I'll think about something stupid I said like 30 years ago and be completely embarrassed on my own. And then I would kick my blanket. Yeah, exactly. Wow, that's it. I love Korean sayings.
So you remember stuff that happened to you when you were 15?
Of course. Yeah, I remember all the embarrassing things I've done. I don't remember much else. I kind of wallow in my depressive state that I don't know, my awkwardness growing up, but yeah, the 이불 kick.
Yeah.
That's
이불
going to be
kick's
the name
good.
of my next album. 이불 kick.
So Chungyun, you started doing stand-up in Korean. How long has it been?
It's been a little bit more than half a year now.
Okay.
So February this year I started. Yes. So it's a long story short. I worked as a journalist and translator for nearly 7-8 years.
Yeah.
Yes.
Actually, we've met before because of your job.
That was between
old
like
job.
2012, 2013. I did some like interpretation gig for educational broadcasting system.
Yeah.
And they had this great show where they would bring in international musicians, and sometimes we'd do interviews with the musicians, and I was the person who'd do that, and we met at that stage.
That's right, yeah.
That was my favorite gig.
Oh, cool. Yeah, that
Yeah.
was a fun show. Like the EBS Space. Have you seen that, Danny?
Yeah.
It's EBS Space 공감 or something.
Yes.
That was a lot of fun. I've done it a few times. And,
Yeah. So I would do freelance journal writing, and my stories ran on LA Times and stuff like that. Wrote a lot of stories about North Korea. But I always wanted to be the funny person because, like, enjoying what I do is the most important thing.
Yeah.
And I don't think I enjoyed writing, like, hard-boiled journalism as much as being funny. And there were two things that I wanted to do in my life. One is to own my own adult toy business.
Okay.
And the second thing is to be a stand-up comedian, which are outrageous for my Korean parents who use all their savings to send me abroad. So I went to college in Seattle, and those were two things I discovered going to college in the United States.
Okay. Let's try back a little.
Wait. What do you mean discover sex toys? How did you discover sex toys?
I mean, you don't grow up like knowing about these things. And then Seattle is a really liberal city.
Yeah.
And I was just walking around this neighborhood, and then I discovered a cupcake store. So I'm like, oh, it's cute. Let's go in. And I find out it's not cupcake store, but it's an adult toy store that has vibrators that look like cupcakes.
And then from right away, you knew you wanted to open your own adult
I mean,
store.
like my eyes open because it was owned by
your eyes open. In Korea, so is it not a common thing? Was it not a common thing growing up?
like
with,
sex is a largely taboo subject.
Yeah.
And as a woman, like you feel oppressed because you can't really, women or men, I guess, because sex business is prevalent. It's everywhere. But at the same time, like exploring sexuality or talking about like sex education, that kind of stuff, you don't really see in Korea.
It's very hush-hush. And
and
like,
especially on like major media, like network TV, you don't really even hear the word sex. It's largely taboo.
Okay.
Yeah. So, and then I walked into the store, which is owned by women, and all their staffers were females. And then I was just like this awkward Asian girl who happened to run into the store thinking that it's a cupcake store. And then this one employee walked up to me and she's like, oh, do you want recommendations? And she was just really, really confident and really friendly. And I was like, oh, this could be a great business model. If I can have that in Korea, then it could be like a safe place for women or anyone to come in and then talk about sex. And that's what I wanted to do, just open up a door to talk about this fun stuff. So that was one idea. And then the second idea was due to stand-up comedy. But coming back after graduating, 2009, I knew I had to compromise because my parents paid for my tuition, for my education, and I had the debt for my education. So I started working as a journalist and doing translation jobs. And then I was hitting age 30, and then I was like, I don't want to not be the major driver of my life because I really never put my heart and soul into the journalism I was doing. And so I just quit everything and then opened up the adult toy shop with a friend.
I see.
And that was 2015.
2015. So actually, are you part of that whole... I feel like in the last few years, I've seen this rise of adult toy businesses just popping up everywhere.
Yeah, actually, me and my co-founder, we kind of started that fad.
That's
because
amazing.
It's as a journalistic perspective, it's such an easy story to write. Like two unmarried women opening up a sex toy shop in Korea, which is largely considered a taboo. And before, adult toy shops were like tiny car by the off the highway, and like this sleazy man in their late 50s just wearing their 등산복, the hiking gear, and like really
you made
creepy.
it more of a accepting,
like a modern,
thing.
like clean thing. And so with that success, we found some success in that business, and we kind of started this fad in Korea.
Wasn't there a movie like that? There was a movie.
Yeah, there was a movie around the same time.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
In that subject, I think it was called Working Girl or something like that. Yeah. So
well, Danny and I, like we've even Danny before he moved here, like even noticed when he was visiting, like, oh, what's going on here? Like for me, I've lived here for almost 7, 8 years, and so I've definitely noticed this new thing coming up and seeing more adult shops. But for me, I grew up in like Times Square, Midtown Manhattan, and that used to be just straight lined with triple X stores.
Like peep show booths,
Yeah.
you know what I mean?
So, I mean, for me, it was like a normal thing to see growing up. But when I came to Korea, it wasn't so normal.
No.
And then seeing it in the past few years, I thought that was very forward thinking and very like refreshing to see because it didn't look dirty. It didn't like these shops don't look dirty. They look very welcoming. They look very, like you can walk in there and not be ashamed of going in there. That's like, I think that's a very important, empowering place to be.
So sorry to talk about adult toy in
No, this is actually really fascinating.
I mean, because to me, like I've been to sex toy shops in the States and, I look at it and it's still, I don't want to say that it's like not taboo. There's still a little bit of like a, like as a dude, you start kind of giggling. Like, like, we do, I mean, but we're going with, if you're going with your girl, right? And then, from my perspective, most of the toys are geared toward women. Most of the toys.
That's because you're only looking
on the women's side.
I've seen the dude section. It is like literally half a shelf from where I went to collecting dust. There's one toy that's shaped like a hand.
Right? I feel like women's toys just getting better. It's getting better, and it's like becoming more high tech. You can like link it to your cell phone.
Oh wow!
Right.
Yeah, and then like have your smartphone to be the controller or whatever. So yes, women's toys are more advanced, and we can just talk about it all day long. But through this whole adult toy business, I gained this newfound confidence that I never had in my life, thinking that, wow, I set my mind into this and I found success and somewhat broke taboo in Korean society. And so I started thinking, what's next for me?
That's
and
where you got the confidence to look back and see, what excited me in the past, and then you had this love of stand-up comedy.
Yeah, so I'm like, checklist, like adult toy shop done. So now on to the stand-up comedy. Yeah. And then, so I started searching, what's going on in terms of stand-up comedy in Korea, and then discovered the guys that Danny has performed with, the 4 dudes who did some stand-up show in Hongdae area.
Yeah, I've been to those shows as well because of Danny. And for me, it's very eye-opening to see, especially being here for as long as I haven't seen stand-up really make an impact until this year. It's really exciting. It's and so I'm really happy for you guys, and I hope that it becomes like the next big thing in comedy. I know that the comedy world in Korea is going through a lot of big changes right now, and the old way of comic relief is kind of dying out, can I say?
I think
or
so.
It's like
there has been a lot of analytical articles about now the TV is not the major force or representation for comedy. So these former comedians, the kegamans, are coming off the TV, and now they're trying to find their stage.
And it's funny that you say following your dreams at a very older age. That's going to have to be a thing for a lot of these comics, right? And kind of switch to a new format.
Yeah,
possibly.
you have to reinvent yourself.
Right. And so,
I mean, from my experience, like I've met a handful of people that are from the what do you call it? Not the slapstick, but they call it gongtu, right? So it's more like improv. It's more sketch comedy.
Okay.
So those people are trying their hand at stand-up here.
Yeah.
And so I don't think they fully understand the difference in the genre.
Yeah.
And so I think it's going to take a little time, more time than I would say most Koreans would want. Because Koreans are a very pali impatient society almost. You know what I'm saying? So in my opinion, from doing stand-up for 7-8 months now here in Korean, and meeting a handful of people from like the Comedy Alive guys that we do stand-up with, or even like some of the well-known people, the famous people that are trying to do stand-up now.
Yeah.
And I see that it's going to take, in my opinion, at least 3 years, at least for it to get to a good base.
But I noticed you said something the other day to me, and you were saying these stand-up guys are really improving quickly.
Yes.
You guys are doing really better on a weekly basis.
Because they are going up on the stage almost like 4 or 5 times a week.
That's the way to do it.
That's the only way to get better and get good in stand-up. I
mean, before the stand-up, before I saw stand-up physically in Korea, I noticed that because I watch a lot of stand-up on YouTube too, or just online. I've been a huge fan of stand-up comedy, but I noticed maybe a year ago or maybe a year and a half ago that I started to see stand-up specials translated in Korean on YouTube.
Yes.
And I was like, who's doing these? Who's doing these translations?
Who's doing God's work?
Yeah, who's doing this? Chamak. Chamak, how do you say that in English? Subtitles.
What the hell? It's an English show, man.
So who's doing this? I was so surprised that this was happening. So I was thinking, if this is being translated into Korean, there's got to be some comics or people or young people that are seeing this and being like, I think I can do this. Is that what's happening now?
I think there were a couple of guys who were kind of crashing into the open mic nights in Hongdae, and those open mic nights were normally for musicians, right?
Yeah.
And there were a couple of stand-up comedians or aspiring stand-up comics who would go into open mic, sign up, and then do 7 minutes of stand-up to an audience who was expecting some kind of musical performance. Okay. So there were those guys, and they started popping up, and they uploaded some stuff on YouTube.
Okay.
And then because the scene is so small right now, it all comes down to Comedy Alive guys and Comedy Haven, which is the only stand-up comedy club in Korea.
Right. Big shout out to those guys.
It's there to me. I've seen them improve tremendously. You know, everyone, even the open micers too. And the one thing I like about at least those people is that they got that Korean hierarchy thing where the 형, 동생 stuff.
Yeah.
So they actually really listen to what I say.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Like there's an American.
Oh, God help them.
There is an English. There's an English speaking stand-up community here in Korea, right?
Yeah.
And obviously, I don't expect them to respect me in any way. I'm not anybody famous, right? But when I tell them this is how I think things should be done, they don't listen. You know what I mean? But the Korean kids, they'd be like, matter of fact, they actually take notes like a proper student would.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
It's so funny. When Danny walks in, it's like, oh, the Grandmaster's here, and we're like the grasshoppers.
Really?
It's
wow.
like, I went to the open mic meeting yesterday.
Oh, you
Okay.
did?
Right? And then I saw them and I was like, woo, all of you stink, right? And so I told them what I would suggest they do to improve.
Yeah.
And hopefully they do my course. I should start a hagwon.
Well, I've seen I've seen a couple Louis C.K. or Bill Burr specials that were translated into Korean. Like those comedy sets that you saw of Margaret Cho, I'm wondering, can you go back and find those and actually, I mean, if you as a Korean, as a Korean person, as a native, that Margaret Cho stand-up spoke to you back then, I wonder if there's more that can be exposed to the Korean stand-up.
So the dynamic changed a little bit in 2016 when Netflix started streaming, and now the professional translators were on interpreting or translating the hour-long specials.
Right.
So before it was some like bits of YouTube clips, like 3-minute long, 5-minute long, but now we have like whole hour translated. So I feel like the translators on YouTube, they pick what they like. So the comics they like, they'll translate. And I don't see a lot of female comedians' work translated on YouTube.
Okay.
So actually, I should be doing it.
You should do that. Yeah.
And you know,
but lazy.
Margaret would love that too. I wonder if we could get even Margaret to come to Korea. I mean, you're friends with Margaret, right, Danny?
Yeah, I know Margaret.
And so I'm actually really close to Margaret's brother.
Yeah. I'm actually closer to Han too.
Oh yeah. Okay. So how cool would that be if we like brought Margaret back to her roots?
I think she was here like 5-6 years ago to do like a bit for SNL Korea.
Oh yeah.
But back then, like zero stand-up comedy, and they're like, who is this Korean American lady speaking only in English?
We got to do that. We got to set up a show for Margaret Cho.
Yeah.
Kenjang, like all the Korean, Korean American stand-ups. How cool would that be?
I'll make some phone calls, guys.
Let's do it.
No, but now you talked about like there aren't any women stand-ups being translated, but you yourself being maybe the only one, like. Do you feel that it is an advantage or a disadvantage in terms of as a woman? Can you say like? Let's say, I mean, I know your material, so can you say more risque stuff?
I think it has worked as an advantage, great advantage so far at this point, because yes, I can say all these like provocative or sexual stuff, and something that if a guy said would be kind of uncomfortable for the audience, but because I'm a woman saying it, maybe the audience takes it more with lighthearted attitude.
Have you had any instances where someone has like shown displeasure in what you've said, or like?
Like last week, I had 2 girls walk out on me. But
they walked out on you.
I don't know if it was my set or it has been built up because of the open micers before me.
Okay.
But I don't mind. Actually, I would love some like honest heckling, but Koreans don't heckle. So.
Oh, right, the heckling thing.
Yeah, Koreans don't heckle.
I know. I noticed that, and I wanted to ask you if that's just they're not ready for it, or do you think it's gonna eventually happen once people feel comfortable to? I think it's I mean, I've seen people just yell out things because they feel like they can just say whatever they want. And it was a Danny show. I think it was a bunch of ajashis that might have been drunk or something like that. And then Danny kind of put them in their place.
I loved one time when he did it. I think more like, it's not like booing or saying that you suck, but it's some 아저씨s or some audience members feel like they can like participate, like 판소리, like they can like do like answer to your rhetorical question or something like that.
So that's kind of like heckling, and so. But I hope could be a thing that. Because I love it personally. Sometimes I go specifically to YouTube to find hecklers and how the way comedians deal with them.
Exactly.
And if that could be a thing in Korea, I think that'd be fun as well.
You know what? I think it's going to... Culturally, it's a little different. I mean, here's the first thing is that, like... for me, I feel that the stance of a stand-up comedian here, just because... of the 반말 and 존댓말, the informal and formal attitude.
Yeah.
Like, there's always... You can't really get to the nitty-gritty of things just from speech, in my opinion, right?
Yep.
And so I think there's that disconnect.
Yeah, we need to figure out how to... really feel like conversation between comics and the audience, but because of that grammar, that language, the tone of the language, all the stand-up comedians in Korea are trying to translate this art form into Korean language, I think.
But then again, that leaves room for this to evolve into something completely new as well.
Right.
I think so too.
Yeah, so.
And that's what I'm, that's what I'm kind of excited about because, like, I mean, there's a kid from the Comedy Alive team where he goes in 반말. That's his whole character.
Yeah.
He's like,
I saw that. He explained to the audience, though. In America, they just do 반말, so I'm going to do 반말. Right?
Yeah. So I was like, okay. I mean, it's a character, but I'm all for it. Now, back to Junghyun. The other thing about her, not only in terms of her being the only female, she actually wrote a book.
Thanks for the plug.
About doing stand-up comedy in general in the Korean language. And not only did she just kind of phone it in and just watch some YouTube clips, she actually went to New York City, lived there for a month?
2 months.
2 months. And she did open mics there.
Talk about due diligence.
That's due diligence.
Yeah.
I mean, and she did a ton of shows there. She went to LA. She interviewed a ton of comedians. So being that you've done open mics here and you've done shows here, but you've also done open mics back in the States, where to me the mecca of stand-up comedy is New York City, right? And so, what were the differences? Like, how did you feel?
Oh wow! So because there's only one open mic for stand-up comedians in Korea, there's so much love and like kind of camaraderie between the stand-up comics, and we kind of know each other's set by heart because I watched at least like 40 times for each open micers. But in New York, from like 2 p.m. to 11:30 p.m., there are so many open mic opportunities where you pay $5, buy a drink, and then you get 5 minutes of stage time. And I would go to like at least 1 or 2 open mic nights or open mic stage to practice, and I feel like, wow, people really don't care. There's like this air of desperation and like disappointment where like 10, 12 comics are just there like miserable and they really don't care. There were some good open mics.
That's a huge difference, but I also understand it, like at least because stand-up comedy has been it's been a thing in the U.S. for so long.
Like hundreds.
And it's amazing that it still exists in that format, like where there's like open mics that you can go to on a weekly basis. I did the open mic scene in New York when I started out as a musician. And that still exists as well, but that was very depressing as well. I'd get to these shows and people, most of them give up. But that's the point. Like you have to... The people that make it aren't necessarily even the most talented. It's just the people that are the most driven. And so in the States, that's a big thing I noticed. Like it depends how driven you are too. But in Korea too, I mean, there's no way you're going to make it if you're not driven.
Exactly.
Because already people don't know what stand-up comedy is, so they have to be more diligent, I think.
Yeah, and the reason why I flew out to New York and like used all my savings writing this small book is because I love this art form so much, and because I have journalistic background, I thought I want the first book about stand-up comedy in Korean language, written by somebody who really likes it. And because it's becoming like a keyword, like a fad, because, some famous people tried it. And now sometimes people search stand-up comedy and really don't even get a grasp of what it is.
Yeah.
So I just really wanted to put a lot of love into the writing and then...
set the record straight.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, but in terms of my comedy, I'm still hacky. My delivery, my jokes, so it's, what kind of authority do I have to write a book about stand-up comedy when I'm not a great performer? But I've been doing it for 6 months, and then I feel like I learned how to play guitar and like start playing in front of live audience, and you're bound to suck. But I really want to get better, and Danny has been giving me great advice, but sometimes I avoid meeting his eyes because I know I haven't improved. So.
No, I mean, to me, the and that's the thing that people don't understand is that it's rare to find like a stand-up prodigy, meaning that with somebody with only 6 months into it, like it's almost impossible for you to be an amazing comic, and that goes all across the board. You know what I mean? And so to me, stand-up comedy is you improve by life experience, but on top of that, stage experience. And being able to experiment and be not afraid to bomb. You know what I mean? I actually tell all the open micers here. Get comfortable with the bombing because you're going to do it a lot, And I think they've learned too well because now they're comfortable with bombing and they're not even fazed by it anymore.
Okay.
Right now I got to tell them, okay, now let's start trying to be funny. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And because I'm the only woman, like, the female audience would walk up to me or like send me a direct message on Instagram and say, "Oh, 언니 멋있어요." Like, "Oh, you're cool." And I'm like, I don't want to be like cool. I want to be funny.
Yeah.
And because there's a certain level of expectations when the MC kind of bring me up on the stage saying that, "Oh, so you've been seeing all male comics tonight. And like now here's the female comic." And I walk up.
when I saw you live, I noticed some of your material was pretty risque, and so for me it was almost like, am I allowed to laugh? Like I wasn't sure, and I wonder if Korean people were feeling the same thing. They clearly laughed, and so whenever they laughed, I felt like I can laugh too.
Yeah.
But I mean, Danny tells some risque jokes. I just don't laugh because they're not funny. but it was like. But I still don't know like the rules in terms of what the taboo scale.
Yeah, the subject matter is an issue, and also like the roasting, like what you did to Danny just now, roasting people. Koreans are not comfortable with being roasted because they don't want to lose their face, I think.
I see. Yeah. Okay.
So
it's okay. Danny doesn't have much of a face. So.
I have a big face. What are you talking about? Huh?
But also, let's say if Danny was older than me and I took that kind of stab at him, that's also another issue we have to deal with, right?
But like you don't.
Danny's a lot younger than me, even though he looks older than me. But
I'm a lot younger. I mean, we're talking a lot younger. We're talking maybe 2 Olympics younger. 2
Olympics.
Oh my goodness.
So in your opinion, like, okay, so we talked about like taboo subjects that are a little bit difficult to touch here in Korea, but also like roasting. Like, what are some taboo subjects in Korea that it's really hard to make people laugh talking about here in Korea, in your opinion?
I guess sex and politics, because in our daily life conversation, we don't really talk about it a lot. Like politics, we don't really talk about with your friends. It's actually a subject that you should avoid if you want to have a good time with your friends, they say. So politics and, sex. So in order for the room to be on the same page and laugh at something, they have to have like certain amount of, like experience talking about these. And when it's just dropped on them, and then they really don't know how to react, like Bobby said.
Shocking.
Yeah. So, but the whole thesis of my book is that a stand-up comedian's job is to test the boundaries and then like deliberately like, crossing over and then coming back, and then like kind of setting the boundaries. And because Korea hasn't had that for decades, really we are starting, what jokes could be accepted by the audience. So I think we are at a great stage, and I really want comedians to, including myself, write smart jokes, like
push the boundaries.
Yeah, right now. But I think what I'm doing is that because I really don't know how to write like clever premise and punchline, I'm just dropping like stuff to shock people, because that brings some kind of reaction, some kind of emotion in people, but not necessarily like a heartfelt laughter. So
well, it's also legitimate though. The humor, that kind of shock humor, is also a legitimate kind of.
So finding my voice. I guess.
So
yeah, I mean, to me, when even like dirty like sex jokes, right? For me, when I hear Koreans tell a sex joke, I mean, like when they try to do it on TV, right? What they do is they go in a roundabout way of they won't directly use certain words or whatever, but they'll go
hint
into
at it.
Yeah, you know what I mean? Like, oh, we exchanged love. You know what I mean? They kind of roundabout way say it.
Okay.
Well, as opposed to the States where it's a little bit more like bam, direct.
In your face.
You know what I mean?
They don't beat around the bush.
Yeah. So those are some of the things that I mean, as a person who can't speak Korean well, I have to figure out how to navigate that, because not only do I need to find the word, I got to go around that word,
exactly,
and then on top of that, say it like a kyopo would, like a foreigner would. I can't say sex, you know what I mean? I gotta, but I can't also say 사랑을 나눈다. You know what I mean? Like I have to figure out a weirder way of saying it.
Right. You say something about like egg stew. I remember. I won't go into detail, but
yeah, egg stew, egg drop soup,
egg drop soup, right?
Egg drop soup.
Yeah,
but we'll leave it at that.
Yeah, but I feel like those kind of analogies Danny comes up with sometimes are so creative that I'm jealous that because he brings in this outsider perspective into looking at Korean language and expressing his viewpoint. I really love. The creative.
Don't give him that much credit. Let's Let's keep him.
No, keep on going.
Keep him humble.
I'll pay you later.
Yeah.
No, but Danny, I have a lot of respect for Danny as a stand-up comedy. I mean, a comedian. He's been doing this for 18, 19 years? 18 years. And so I have a lot of respect for people that stick with things, even though they're not great at it.
Exactly.
And so, no, but in the beginning, I mean, when you're in the beginning, that's when it's the hardest, because you're still, trying to figure out your voice. And that's when you're going to get the least amount of laughs, right? And so why stick with it? And so you really have to love this form of art. And I think Danny, to his credit, he's been around a long time doing this, and he's gotten lots of laughs over the years, but I'm sure he's got lots of stories of having just crickets and quiet rooms.
Like I've done a lot of bombing runs.
I've been there too. I mean, I've seen you bomb as well, and I think it's hilarious personally. But
that's the thing. Like for friends, I mean, even amongst comics, we either want to see our friends do really well, or we want to see them bomb. And one way or the other, it's going to be a good time for us. Now, if they kind of have an okay set, then we have nothing to talk about, right? But if they really did well, I'll be like, holy crap, dude, you killed it. Or woo!
Yeah. And because I've been seeing my fellow open micer comics that bomb like one after another. When somebody kills, it's just like atomic bomb of like laugh wave.
It's a win for everyone, too.
It gives me chills, but it happens rarely. So.
But yeah, when I go, I've been to the Comedy Haven now like 3 times. And so whenever I go and I see, I don't actually know 100% what the comics are saying. Yeah. But when the room is laughing, like I really feel great for everyone, because I feel like this is a win for Korea, and Korea needs to have another form of comic relief. You know,
exactly.
I mean, it can only help with the state of. I don't know. I don't know. Maybe, comedy is always going to be good. Laughter is always good for the soul. So I think if we can make stand-up comedy like even bigger, I think that'd be great. But
you talked about like you and your fellow open micers, sometimes having like a stink run of just bombing. What keeps you keeps you from leaving? What keeps you going doing stand-up?
So personally, it's kind of emotional story, but I used to have this like really bad stage fright, like social phobia, all kinds of things that kept me from raising my voice or standing in front of an audience. And just the fact that I get to do it, and yes, I'm not making any money out of this at this point, but just the fact that you get to go on stage and like tell jokes, that's a crazy idea for me every day. So, and I think I'm still in the honeymoon phase of like loving, this comedy. And, maybe, I don't know, there will be time that I hit the wall and feel like not doing it, but.
Divorce.
Divorce.
Yeah.
But I just, I'm really appreciative of the fact that there's a comedy club and my fellow comics, and I get to do it and introduce myself as I feel embarrassed to say stand-up comedian because I'm not making my living out of it, but say, hey, I do stand-up comedy and you should come and see me bomb. Yeah.
I want everyone to try. I mean, like, I'm gonna tell you right now, you're going to hit the wall eventually, right? We all do. I mean, you're gonna hit the wall many times. But the reason why I keep on going, when I first started, the reason was it felt like a drug. The audience reaction. When they boom, they laugh at the stuff you thought about. You're like, oh wow. This is the best drug. This is better than sex. For real.
It validates your experiences, your livelihood, being alive, right?
But you know what the crazy thing is that if you bomb, that feeling will last until the next time you go up. Right? But if you kill, that feeling fades immediately after you leave the comedy club. You know what I mean?
That's very depressing.
It is super depressing.
Like drug.
Yeah, but it's like
haven't done it, but
to me, that's what it feels like. It feels like, yo, man, like even back home when I had a great set, and I'm driving back home into my reality of, well, I still live in this crappy apartment. My life's not going to change tomorrow. You know what I mean? So the idea was never about being famous or being like rich because of this. I'm sure it'd be great, but ultimately it's me chasing that feeling.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
I understand that too. I mean, whenever I have a show, good or bad, let's talk about good, but whenever I have a good show, I know for myself that the next day I'm going to be really depressed because when you're on a high, there's only one way to go, right? Yeah. So same thing. I had such a great weekend, by the way. My film, I made a film called Fiction and Other Realities, and it premiered at the Checheon International Music Film Festival. And we did really well. It was a really awesome weekend. But my biggest fear was, I'm going to be on this high, and then as soon as I get back to Seoul, I'm going to just be super depressed. And the first person I saw was Danny. And that didn't help.
So I was the first person he saw. I was like,
no.
Hey, did you get back? And he's like, yeah. What are you going to do? Well, we got to talk about this podcast right now.
But yeah, I mean, it does have that like drug kind of feeling. But yeah, you have that I think everyone has that experience in whatever they do and whatever they love doing. There's always going to be this like push and pull, like kind of, it can't always be perfect all the time, right? And
exactly. But I feel like many things in life takes luck. It takes the talent and hard work, but luck is so important.
Sure.
And I feel like 2018, boom, Danny's here.
Yeah.
Like, why is he here at this moment when like stand-up comedy is such a becoming like a thing? And I put my book out, and luckily I got to do some interviews with Korean press. And so when you like do the Korean Naver search of stand-up comedy, then my book's there, and I got invited to do some radio shows, and that never happens to any like 6 month.
You're on the When in Seoul podcast.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Oh
my God, do you know how many people listen to this? So many people. You're gonna be so famous.
I know, and I took some classes in New York, and my fellow classmates, they're still doing open mics, and some bring our shows, but just the level of opportunity that's been given to me, I feel like I should work harder. But yeah, long way to go to find my funny voice.
Now that you are a stand-up comedian, do your friends or friends of friends like, oh, you do stand-up now? Like, tell us a joke. Do you get one of those?
I haven't gotten that yet because when they hear stand-up comedy, they're like, what is that?
What is that?
Yeah, what is that? But I'm constantly trying out bits to my friends. And
oh my gosh, Danny, every time I see him, I know it's coming. And he doesn't like say, hey, can I tell you a joke? He'll just like work it in the conversation and be like, here we go again.
Yeah, exactly.
That's funny.
You could see that?
That's funny.
You could see that?
Absolutely, man.
Yeah, sometimes I go, you know what? This is going to be a joke.
Yeah,
but
this is a bit.
This is what I'm working on, right? You know?
But I see a lot of comics do that. And it's part of the job.
Yeah.
I mean, you have to work out your material somehow because you're not always going to be on stage.
Exactly. A pet peeve I have is that Koreans take stand-up comedy as standing comedy. And that's just like a Konglish thing. Yeah. And so I was invited to give some speech about, I don't know, finding your path or whatever. And then they wrote standing comedian as my vocation. Really? And I had to correct them.
Did you do the talk sitting down? I'm sorry. I'm not the comic here.
Boo! Get off stage! You suck!
Yeah. But I understand. It just annoys me because, like, when you search standing comedy, my book doesn't come up. So that's the only thing I'm annoyed about. But yeah.
So why don't you tell the listeners where, how, what the book's called?
Oh, the book's called Stand Up Now, New York. And because I was inspired by the New York comedians, I interviewed a lot of New York comedians. Hopefully I can punch it up to be like Stand Up Now, and then I'll cover the East and West Coast, which are the two major cities for stand-up comedy. So New York and LA. But it's like stand-up comedy for dummies for Koreans, but it's not really about how to write stand-up comedy jokes, but it's about where it comes from and how it's like a valid art form, and so many like comedy giants and greats who has extended the boundary in United States, because comics in US used to get arrested like back in 1960s and 70s. And because they never gave up and went up on stage and told jokes, they had all these freedom of speech on stage. And because in Korea, we never had that, we still have that limit of what could be spoken on stage or on TV. So this is kind of my call to the Koreans to, hey, you need to come to the live comedy show to really change the boundaries of what could be told in terms of jokes. Okay. And comics tell jokes, and you as audience respond by giving dead silence or, giving heartfelt laughter, so we know what's funny and what could be accepted. Yeah. So you can find it on like Kyobo, the biggest chain in Korea, or online like Yes24, Aladdin, etc.
So it's called Stand Up Now, New York.
Yeah.
Dude, she got to talk to like Dave Attell and like Colin Quinn.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah,
That's
I just grabbed them off stage, but they're relatively unknown in Korea. Like Dave Attell, nobody knows.
Dave Attell is like a
god
in stand-up comedy club world.
Deal.
Big time deal. You know what I mean? So that's awesome.
Yep.
That's very cool. Yeah.
Well, how should we end this? Okay. Your goals in stand-up comedy.
Goals in stand-up comedy is to how to say it? In Korean I say like 좋은 comedy, but I don't want to say good comedy. So tell jokes, but tell it in an honest voice. I don't want to play a character. I want to be me, and just keep on going is my goal.
Yeah, I feel like you are you on stage.
Thank you.
You know what I mean? You're not. There's no character. There's a little bit of awkwardness on stage, and I'm like, well, she is a bit of an awkward person in real life.
But it works in your favor. I think that there's. I know what you're talking about, but when you're on stage, you're completely confident, though.
Yeah.
Which is Which is hard to, that alone is hard to do because people, you can tell them when they're nervous.
Yeah.
And that just ruins everything.
Yeah,
But,
even if the joke is funny,
Yeah.
if the audience goes, oh, this person is like nervous.
Yeah, they can smell it.
They
like,
project that onto the audience.
yeah.
The audience feels nervous.
Yeah.
You never want that. So
hopefully you continue doing stand-up comedy, Jung-Yoon, and continue to strive to tell good jokes in your voice.
And be Danny one day. No.
Oh, don't.
You
Oh,
don't want to be me. I'm too hard to get to. No, but I mean, to be honest, since there aren't that many people doing stand-up comedy, you know what I mean? Like, I'm not going to say I'm the best Korean-speaking stand-up comic because there are famous people that are now jumping into this pool, the stand-up comedy pool. But I'm going to go get them too.
Oh, yeah.
I'm going to be better than them too. So for all those listeners, if you are interested in checking out Korean stand-up comedy, there's a handful of venues, but I would say one of the bigger venues or the best venue is probably to the Comedy Haven. And also every other Saturday, there's a show in Hongdae at the JDB Square. I'm going to be on. Actually, I do both shows, so come check me out. And where can people find you or your schedule to check you out?
My Instagram handle is @standupjy, so you can follow me, please. And I post my schedule weekly.
Well, Jung-Yoon, thanks for coming and edifying us about stand-up comedy in Korea.
Thanks for having me.
yeah. Thanks for being here. It's a nice break from having to just talk to Danny.
Man, he's been crapping on me the whole day. You've noticed I haven't made fun of him once today, right? Because you know what? I respect my elders. And for all those listeners, if you have any questions or comments or maybe suggestions on topics, please email us at peninsulapod@gmail.com. Bye, guys.
Today